Yo, what up, DT? Let's get to it. Yeah. Hit him with the hook first.
Full court press, 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 full court press.
NBA talk all night on the press.
Full court press, 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 full court press.
NBA talk all night on the press.
Welcome to the show. We done seen folks move from the west to the east coast. Tired of the cities, so they head to the beach shore. While the rest of the colleagues request to proceed forward. Player movements
always lead to improvements.
That's what's hot now. Boom pow, another star gone. Yeah, he long gone. We need more leaders like Caesar. They focused on the prize. Legends don't die, even if they long gone in disguise. Perform within the boundary lines, and you're good to go. Be a man, don't be out there just playing for show. Cause we'll be in the barbershop talking all week. Topic to topic, the media don't sleep. Put that S on your chest, pick up the phone, and make sure that you're calling to the full court press, full court press, full court press.
What's up, everybody? This is Danny Thompson from Full Court Press Radio on the AroundTheAssociation.com, and this is the Atlanta Hawks season 50 edition of the podcast. So, what this whole podcast is about is everything related to the team in Atlanta. And a team that has one of the most exciting young nucleuses across the league. And going into last season, the real question was, how can Trae Young adapt himself into the NBA game? We saw him in college, and we saw the numbers, we saw the comparisons. You know, the guy was hitting 35, 40-foot three-pointers on a regular basis. He was making plays. And really, he was averaging, over 30 points a game, almost 10 assists a game, if not 10 assists. And he was doing it with an Oklahoma team that exactly wasn't the best team in college basketball. There were so many assists that his teammates missed open shots on that he probably could have had maybe 11, 12 assists a game just on the fact that they missed shots completely by themselves. And the real thing with concern with Trae Young was, how is he going to adapt to the NBA? Remember, the Hawks drafted Luka Doncic in the draft that year, and they traded for him, and Doncic was supposed to be the guy that was ready to play. Now, we saw how Doncic turned out, and for the most part of the rookie season, Doncic was dominant as the Dallas Mavericks were turning into a team of the future. Well, it didn't start off auspiciously in Trae Young's direction. Summer League didn't give a lot of the doubters much to feel comfortable about. And really, the first couple months of the season, Trae was adjusting to the NBA. But if you ask any point guard in the NBA, or ask any guard or any rookie, or ask anybody who's been in the league, past, present, they'll tell you the hardest position to learn in the NBA is the point guard position. Anybody come into the league, the point guard position is the hardest one to learn, because guess what? The NBA is full of top-notch point guards, and it's an adjustment period, it's a learning curve, because it's different. When you're in college, in Trae's case, you were controlling the ball and also shooting when you needed to. In the NBA, it's more than just shooting. You have to get your teammates involved. You have to run the offense. And on top of that, Atlanta had a brand new head coach in Lloyd Pierce, and they had a young nucleus of players that was wrapped around John Collins as the main part of the offense, and part of the center piece. Trae struggled in the beginning, but in the second half of the season is when Trae Young turned it on. If you didn't watch Trae Young in the second half of the season, you saw a guy who didn't get the rookie wall, and that happens to a lot of rookies. Trae got stronger as the second half of the season wore on, and Trae was just lighting up teams and wearing teams out, not only with his three-point shooting and his long range, but his playmaking ability. Young was, the turnover numbers are going to be high because he handles the ball a lot. But, there were so many 20 and 10 and 30 and 10 games he had down the second half of the season. Go back and watch that Chicago game. If you watch any game that Trae had, Chicago was a tremendous one. He was knocking down game-winning shots. The Hawks finished 29-53 last year, but they were 10-14 after the All-Star break. They averaged almost 123 points a game in the second half of the season, or after the All-Star break, and the Hawks started to find a rhythm. Now, it was more than not just Trae Young. It was more John Collins. Kevin Huerter was getting used to the offense. They had guys like like Taurean Prince and Kent Bazemore on the squad, but you also saw improvements from guys like Dwayne Dedmon, Alex Len. The Hawks were turning the corner. Well, now fast forward to this offseason. The Hawks had 2 lottery picks in the draft this year. The one they had from the Dallas Mavericks, which Neither one of the picks didn't end up with Zion Williamson, but they ended up with another top 10 pick in the draft. On top of that, they were able to do some maneuvering and really position themselves for a future run. Now, the drafting of Cam Reddish and DeAndre Hunter might in some cases kind of remind you of the DeAndre Bembry and Prince draftings a couple years ago, but there's some differences to it. The Hawks have an exciting young core. The nucleus of guys on this roster, John Collins. We mentioned, like I said, Trae Young. You have Reddish. Now you have DeAndre Hunter. Kevin Huerter. This team is starting to put themselves in the right direction. The question is this a playoff team? Well, let's take a look at the Hawks going forward in the 2019-2020 season. Like I said, it starts with Trae Young at point guard. It's really the development of Trae Young. Now, John Collins, is the focal point in the front court, but the movement of Trae Young and his development will be the Hawks' future. Young started taking better shots. Yes, he has his moments where he does a little bit out of control, and he does take a little bit too many 30-foot three-pointers because, let's face it, the guy can knock him down. But he has to be a little bit more in control, and you saw that in the second half of the season. I thought that you saw that in Lloyd Pierce, that he was giving the kid a little bit more free reign. Now you have a more mature Trae Young who's putting on, more, not more muscle, but just much more tone to the body and able to take more punishment and contact. He also spent some time with Team USA this summer. Once again, anytime you spend time with Team USA, whether you're selected or not, it is very high quality basketball work. Unlike some guys who took the summer off, and there's nothing wrong with that. A lot of the guys who took the summer off were experienced veterans, guys who are elite players in the league. But for the young guys like Collins, like Trae Young, this experience with the select team, they had no chance of making the Olympic team next summer unless there's injuries to possibly happen, or Trae Young just has a meteoric rise, which could happen. But the experience you get being around top level coaches and high level players are going to help those guys going forward. So what if people think Team USA's World Cup roster is nothing but C and B list NBA players? You must forget a lot of these guys are all-stars or were former all-stars at one point in time. Kemba Walker is one of the best players in the entire league. Chris Middleton was an all-star this year. You have really good young players, Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum on this roster, among other players on this team. So, and not to mention Donovan Mitchell is going to be a star. And that's another story for another podcast. Probably when I get to the Jazz. But the experience that Trae Young and John Collins will have will be invaluable. I mean, they're playing with, like I said, playing with Greg Popovich, playing with Jeff Van Gundy as he was the coach for the select team this summer. Being around those guys are going to help Trae and John's development a lot more than some cases playing in regular season or regular summer work games against, guys that are not going full throttle. It was a competition, and those guys put on a very, very good effort. And what we're looking for Trae Young in year 2 is more than just the numbers. It's the fact of him being a leader and something he's always been good at. He's very underrated. He's still a kid, but he's leading a young group of guys. And really, to be honest with you, I can see a huge change in Trae's numbers this year. I see his field goal percentage going up. I can see him hitting 46, 47% of his shots this year. I think he's going to take much more smarter shots. And your number 1 and your number 2 is always about body development. Guys wear down. This is not college. In college, you're playing 35, 40 games tops. It depends on what program you're at. In the NBA, you do 35, 40 games before you get to the new year, in some cases, or maybe to February. So when you're in February and you're getting into conference play or getting into that part of the year in college basketball, you're already 35, 40, maybe 45 games deep into the season. So that wall does hit. In year 2, it doesn't happen as bad. So I think Trae won't even hit the rookie wall as bad in year 2 as he did in year 1. I think the development of his body is going to be the real key. What can you see from Trae Young this year? I really honestly see this guy putting up big numbers this year. And when I say big numbers, I don't think league scoring numbers. I think you can see Trae Young right around that 22-point a game, 8.5, 9 assist number on a regular nightly basis. He plays the pick and roll really well, and you have to guard the pick and roll. Otherwise, Trae can kill you at all points in time in that in that scheme. And with John Collins being able to roll to the basket and Collins' super athleticism, don't think there's going to be a lot of don't think there's not the option of a lot of alley-oops going forward. His backcourt mate's going to be Kevin Huerter at the very beginning. Huerter, another sharp shooter, and we'll have a lot more open looks because Trae gets to the lane. Now, Kevin's job is to knock down shots. Kevin Huerter, I'm not going to play a comparison game because it's really easy for guys like Kevin Huerter. He is a knockdown shooter. Huter, for him to be in the game, he has to be able to knock down shots. He's not the best defender in the world, and that's not what you're asking for. But you're asking Kevin Huter to be a 40% three-point shooter. You're asking him to be another version you're asking him to do what Joe Harris does for Brooklyn. You're asking him to do what J.J. Redick's going to do down in New Orleans. You want him to be what Klay Thompson does. You want him to knock down shots. When he gets that ball in his hands, you want him to fire away and not be worried about missing. He has to be able to shoot with no conscience and be able to shots to fall in. If Huter's hitting shots with Trae Young, it's going to make things easier for Collins because you can't pack the paint. Now, you're looking at the wings. They trade Kent Bazemore away in the offseason. Baze, one of the more long-time Hawks, is now in Portland. And I know he's going to do well out there. But they also brought in Jabari Parker. Parker is a guy who's bounced around the league the last couple of years, was really considered one of the more talented up-and-coming players, but has suffered injuries over the last couple of years that has stagnated, a career that could have been something. Parker was one of the best players in high school basketball, went to Duke, has suffered 2 season-ending leg injuries in the last 3 years that has kind of stagnated his game a little bit. Now he's coming to Atlanta, fresh off of having a pretty solid season in Washington. Now he has to prove himself all over again. Will he be a starter? I'm not sure about that, because where Jabari Parker lacks is he going to be good enough to guard small forwards in this league? I'm not sure. He's more of a power forward guy, but you already have that in Collins. With Parker, he can play the wing. One thing about Jabari is that Jabari can get baskets and he can score the basketball. Jabari Parker is a professional scorer. I mean, when given the opportunity, he can be a 20-point-a-game scorer in the league. We've seen it. We've seen it on multiple occasions. He is inside and outside. He can do a lot of different things with the ball in his hands. He's not the super athletic guy he was in high school, but he's athletic enough to be able to get his own shot and create his own shot. Now, what is he going to do in Atlanta? I don't think he's going to be a starter, but he will be be provided and asked to score a lot for Lloyd Pierce going in the direction of the 2019-2020 season. I do expect Jabari Parker to, if he actually, if he keeps his head in the game and plays, he should get a significant number of minutes in the rotation for Lloyd Pierce. Now, otherwise, you're looking at John Collins as your power forward. Collins is one of the more up-and-coming power forwards in the NBA. He's in that second tier of power forwards in the league, and he's only getting better. What people saw, remember, was the dunk contest. He did the Wright brothers dunk. Big shout-outs to him for that. Yeah, he clipped the wing. It is what it is. But that just proves the guy has super athleticism. He is a guy who could potentially be a double-double threat. He does block shots. He does do a lot of little things. He still has lots to work on in this game. He's got to be more consistent with his jump shot. He might have to back out a little bit and just take more of the 16, 17 footers and be able to hit them with consistency. We're not asking him to shoot all game long from there, but just be able to stretch the defense enough to say, okay, you know what? I can hit this shot. Now you're going to have to guard me out here. Collins he's super athletic and he's going to be able to get a lot of putbacks when the Hawks do miss a lot of shots. They're going to shoot the ball a lot. One thing about Lloyd Pierce's offense is that they run. They're going to get a lot of shots. They're going to be shooting from everywhere on the perimeter. They have plenty of guys who can do it. The real question is Collins is going to get a lot of rebounds. Now, what's going to be lacking is the fact that Dwayne Dedmon's now gone. He left in the offseason. He signed a free agent deal away from Atlanta this year. So it really is based on the fact of Alex Len and rookie Bruno Fernando. When you look at the Hawks, Alex Len, the one thing about Alex Len is that Alex Len is one of those guys that he'll have one good game and like 2 bad games. But that one real good game will put up really, really good numbers, and then by the time you get the 2 bad games, everything averages out. Alex Len is a solid center if you're just finding something for now. Is he going to carry the Hawks long term? He's got to be consistent. That's something he's never been in this league. Alex Len has a lot of talent. We saw that in college. He was one of the more highly touted big men when he went to Maryland. We saw him in college do this, but you don't know what you're going to get from him. And that's just the one thing the Hawks fans have to realize. Alex Len is very streaky. He plays, he doesn't play to his potential and a lot. And we saw that in Phoenix, and that's why Phoenix got rid of him. But he averaged 20 minutes a game last year, 11 points and 5 rebounds. It's not consistent with him. If it is consistency there, then guess what? The Hawks have something going for them. But if he's not having a consistent night, there's not Dwayne Dedmon there to back him up, giving him extra minutes. And that becomes the real issue with Alex Len. If you look at Alex Len's numbers last year, he played Alex Len played 77 games last year. But just remember, he hit double digits 32 times last year. He did double digits in half the games. But in 35 of those games, of those 77 games he played, he scored under 10 points. It's just the inconsistency of Alex Len that frustrates Hawks fans. And I know it's frustrating because you're not sure what you're going to do. Like I said, Dedmon's gone, so where are you going to get the interior scoring from? Well, you got rookie Bruno Fernando, you have Damian Jones they brought in from Seattle, or from Golden State. Those guys are going to try to fight to earn extra minutes. And don't forget, if they need to, Collins can slide over to the 5. I don't think he'll do it on a regular basis. Now, your bench in Atlanta is a little bit interesting. The Hawks added some key veterans to the bench. They added Chandler Parsons, they added Evan Turner, and they added Allen Crabbe. 3 guys with insanely big contracts, and 3 guys who, they were all good. They were really good at one point. Evan Turner has now turned into one of the best second unit guys in the NBA. He's pretty much going to be a backup point guard for the Hawks in the second unit. He does a very good job of controlling the offense. He does the little things. He does everything that you ask him to. Doesn't do anything extraordinary well. He's just a guy that he doesn't blow you away, but he's not bad enough where you can't have him on the floor. He's very versatile. He can play 3 positions. He will be the backup point guard for now, and he will be the one to facilitate the offense in the second unit. And if really need to, he can also be the guard while Trae Young plays off ball if needed to. Now, Allen Crabbe, like Kevin Huerter, is a knockdown shooter. Allen Crabbe was in Portland knocking down shots, got a big contract in Brooklyn, and never lived up to it. The one thing about Allen Crabbe, the same way with Kevin Huerter, the same way we see with Trae Young, they can knock down shots, and they'll have to knock them down consistently. Allen Crabbe's job is to knock down shots off the bench and be able to be a feeder system to get the Hawks offense going in the second unit. Chandler Parsons is the guy who's the X factor. Parsons, who wants to play, but his body physically has been breaking down over the last couple years, has his moments. Where the guy who was 6'10" at one point, 6'10" Larache used to call himself a while ago, but this is not the same Chandler Parsons we saw in Houston. Hell, this is not even the same Chandler Parsons that was in Dallas. I mean, he got a lot of money, has a huge contract, and he just hasn't. Injuries has torn his body up to the point where if he can give you 13, 14 minutes a game, it'll be well worth everything he can get, especially if he's not playing on a nightly basis. I know it's hard to say why he's not playing on a nightly basis because his body's not going to allow him to do it. But when Parsons is in the game, he's another shooter. Once again, we're going to refer to this again. The Hawks have shooters everywhere. They have guys who can hit shots. You should not worry about the fact that the Hawks having guys who can't hit shots down a stretch of games. They have guys who can shoot them. The question is, will they be able to make them? And they can hit them on a regular basis. Outside of those 3, Vince Carter's back for another season. Carter still can shoot the basketball. And there's moments where Vince is, shows that he still has hops. But Vince is not going to play a lot of minutes. So let's not even go there with Vince Carter being an X factor, but he's another guy that is versatile enough to hit the shots. But I think that he'll be more of a coaching role this year because the Hawks have drafted 2 guys on the wing that have uber talent. And I'm talking about, well, number 1, the guy who I think has the biggest upside in his entire class, more than Zion Williamson, more than RJ Barrett. Barrett, I think, is going to be a star. But no one has more upside in this draft than the Hawks' Cam Reddish. Reddish was the guy at Duke. Yes, he was the third man of that group. You have Zion Williamson, you have RJ Barrett, like a big 3 situation. Somebody had to take the backseat role, and that was Cam Reddish. Reddish is superly talented. I mean, he could have went anywhere and been a star anywhere. The one thing about Cam Reddish that was kind of surprising to me is that Reddish didn't hit the open shot very well. Now, there were moments where Reddish played really, really well at Duke. Go back to the Florida State game when Zion was out. That game when they went down to Tallahassee and they took care of business. But Reddish was the guy in that game who was just more dominant than his teammate RJ Barrett. Barrett struggled in that game a little bit, but Reddish was dominant in that game. Reddish didn't show enough domination the entire year. 1, because he didn't have to. And 2, he just seemed kind of tentative. He was the one that kind of lied in the weeds and let those 2 guys, who were extremely talented, run most of everything. Now, the thing is, with a lot of guys that are in that swing position, Reddish has to stand out. And what Cam does is Cam is super athletic. He has the form and the ability to knock down shots. He has the potential to be a really good 2-way player, but he has that star factor in him. It's something I really couldn't put into words. He has that it factor. The question is, there's a gaping hole at small forward right now because you don't know who the starting small forward is. And if Reddish, I think it's going to be Cam's job to turn into that. I think if Reddish turns into that, then guess what? The Hawks have got themselves a superstar, a guy with star power at the small forward position. It's going to take time, and Hawks fans have to realize they have a lot of options right now. They have a lot of guys they can play at that 2 and the 3 right now. So expecting Cam Reddish to come in right now and like literally blow things away, or expecting him to do that, it might be a little bit too much in the first part of the season. But I think if they start giving this kid minutes, he starts showing that he can handle minutes, this kid has every bit of star written in him. Their other pick, now Reddish was taken 8 or 9 in the draft. The other pick, the guy they took in the lottery, the higher part of the lottery, the first pick was DeAndre Hunter. Hunter was the best all-around defensive player in college basketball last year. There wasn't one thing that you could not ask DeAndre Hunter to do defensively. He's the AC Defensive Player of the Year. He rotates well. He can defend. He's long-armed. He gives every effort. And if you go back to that national championship game, the kid can score the basketball because he's a guy that can shoot the basketball that you didn't really realize it because he's so good defensively. Hunter should come in if Kevin Huerter can't become what the Hawks need him to be early in the season. I expect DeAndre Hunter to basically start at the shooting guard position. Number one, he can guard he can guard the guards. He can guard the 2 guards around the league and also guard the better point guards in the league that Trae has issues with guarding. He is a kid that loves to defend and he will get after it. He can knock down shots from the wing. He can create his own shot. He's also athletic as well too. The Hawks have the potential to make this thing look real interesting in the Eastern Conference. They have a bunch of shooters who can run, and Lloyd Pierce has a team that can really do it and get up and down. Now, like I said, we did talk about the interior part being a little bit weak. Alex Len is a starter out there. You also have Damon Jones, like I said, who came over from Golden State. But he didn't really show much because Golden State ran, and he just kind of didn't fit their system. I'm not sure. He's a good hustle guy, can block a few shots here and there, but he's not a game changer. Well, the Hawks took their other pick in the draft and drafted Bruno Fernando from Maryland, a guy who is a bruiser and a complete load. The guy does a lot. He was a double-double machine. He has the versatility to come out and step out and hit that three-point shot. He has range out to the NBA line. Not asking him to shoot threes, but he has that ability to make range. He's very strong and is a bull down low. What he can do in this season is that he's going to have time to develop, but if he really, really turns into something, he can come in. He has a better chance of being a starter at this point than you have than Hunter and Reddish at this point, because Alex Len's inconsistencies and Jones has really never proven anything in the NBA. Fernando has every chance to come in and make an impact right now. The Hawks can use it because you don't want to. John Collins would rather play the 4 than play the 5. Collins will have to play the 5 because the Hawks want to run and get their best unit on the floor. Let's be honest with you. You're going to have Collins at the 4 and Collins at the 5, whether it be Cam Reddish at the 4, whoever you decide to play at the 4, Chandler Parsons. You're going to have to put somebody who can stretch the wing at the floor. Reddish will be there. DeAndre Hunter will be there. And Trae Young will be out there. Like I said, don't sleep on Kevin Huerter being a shooter. And the Hawks will have to play smaller because the Eastern Conference is smaller. But if Fernando can come in and show that he can stay out of foul trouble, not commit silly fouls, and really just play hard every night like we saw him at Maryland, he could be the surprise sleeper of this entire draft class. I think he might make more of an impact as a rookie than Hunter, than Reddish, only because of the fact of he doesn't have as much veteran competition, and what's up front isn't exactly something he couldn't overtake on the depth chart. So, where does the Atlanta Hawks finish up? Lloyd Pierce had a very good first season as head coach. For a guy, who's known as a player's coach, he's assembled himself a very, very good young team, and the team is extremely young. Like, they have the veterans. I mean, you can't get no more veteran than Vince Carter. But you have guys like Parsons and Turner and Crabbe who've been around the league for a long period of time. Guys who had success in the league. I said Turner and Crabbe and Parsons had deep playoff runs. But they have guys who are extremely young. We mentioned DeAndre Bembry only because of the fact of he's got to figure out a role too. But when you have Young, you have Collins, you have Reddish, you have Fernando, you have Jabari Parker, you have DeAndre Hunter, and Kevin Huerter, this team's extremely, extremely young, extremely youthful and bouncy and super athletic. What the Hawks are going to lack this year is the fact of it's just continuity. The Hawks are 1 year away. Let's just call a spade and call it what it is. The Hawks are 1 year away from doing something really, really special. Hawks fans just have to be a little bit patient. Hawks fans have to be patient. This is not the year for you guys to expect to make the playoffs. You guys can make a playoff run. I think it's going to fall short only because of the fact of the teams in front of you in the East are just a little bit better and have a little bit more experience. If the Hawks can somehow, I don't know, they can win the lottery, and if the Hawks can land James Wiseman, the Hawks will be set. James Wiseman, if it happened to be the draft, will be the final piece of the puzzle. The Hawks shouldn't have to worry about the playoffs this year. Just be patient. The Hawks are one young big man away. And now if Fernando turns into that big man, you don't need one in the draft. You're one big man away and just trying to figure out these guys' pieces. Where's Cam Reddish going to fit in? Is Reddish going to be the starting small forward? Is DeAndre Hunter going to be the starting shooting guard? If that were to be the case, the Hawks would have a young group that is going to be something to be feared in the Eastern Conference. We talked about the Sixers, people talked about the Sixers a couple years ago with all their youth. The Hawks might be more dangerous than the Sixers were a couple years ago. The Hawks have just as much young talent as New Orleans, and they have a group that's just as good as New Orleans. Don't sleep on the group of Memphis being young, but Atlanta has a nucleus that could be a playoff threat for years to come. They're just 1 year away and 1 year away of growth and development from turning this thing completely around. And the Hawks have one of the brightest futures in the NBA. It will not lead them to a playoff run this year unless somebody in the East gets one of the teams in the East who are slotted from 5 through 9. One of their elite level players, all-star caliber players, gets hurt. Like I say, Blake Griffin goes down in Detroit, or Vucevic goes down in Orlando, or Jimmy Butler goes down in Miami. If one of those guys gets hurt, we don't want that to happen. One of those guys seriously gets hurt and misses a significant number of time, and those teams fall apart, the Hawks can maybe slide themselves in the playoffs. I have them at 10th in the East right now to start the season. I think they're the best of the teams that's not Detroit in that second level. They'll be battling with Detroit for the second part of the season. The Hawks will probably fade away probably in March, only because of the fact of I'm just not sure I'm just not thinking they're ready for that big primetime stage yet. But they have the guys ready. Trae, now if Trae turns into having a All-NBA type season and John Collins turns into an All-Star, this will change everything. If Fernando turns out to be really better than a lot of people expect him to be, maybe this could happen. If Reddish or Hunter really flourish as rookies, then you have a chance. I don't think they're a playoff team this year, but the Hawks are one of the most dangerous teams in the NBA in the 2020-2021 season. Don't do it this year. The Hawks will be more dangerous next year. So their ceiling is, so before we close the podcast, the ceiling for the Hawks is their ceiling is making a 7th or 8th push in the playoff run. That's the ceiling. The bottom is they're back in the lottery. And the bottom's lottery means they are actually not a 33, 34 win team. They're probably in the mid 20s. That's the bottom part. It's just because the young guys don't get better, and they seem to struggle, or they get into a patch where they lose a bunch of games in a row. We're talking those 12, those 9, 10 out of like 13, 9 out of 10, 9 out of 11, or when they get into a stretch where they lose a bunch of games in a stretch of time that can bury the Hawks. That's their bottom part. Their bottom part, I think, is their floor is a 26 win team, maybe 27. But their ceiling is they could potentially make the playoffs. I have them right around 35 wins. I think that's probably the sweet number. It's going to be an improvement over last year. They're going to be challenging for the Eastern Conference playoffs, probably, like I said, until mid-March. And that unless they decide to make a move, or one of these guys, these two of these young guys can step into a bigger role, 35 wins is about right. So, am I right or am I wrong? Let me know how you feel. Follow Around the Association on Facebook at Around the Association radio, as well as aroundtheassociation.com. Check out the podcast, subscribe to it, pass it to your friends, Hawks fans. I want to know exactly what you think about your team this year. Am I completely off-centered? Am I completely correct about your team? Did I miss somebody? Did I fail to go over somebody? Let me know how you feel. Follow me on Twitter, follow me on Facebook, follow me on everywhere social media wise. So we still have a whole bunch more teams to go. So when your favorite team podcast comes up, you know where to look for. This is Dan Thompson, Around the Association. Catch you guys later. Peace.
Yo, what up, DT? Let's get to it. Yeah. Hit him with the hook first. Full court press.